DrugFreeAZKids.org's monthly webinar. Today we're going to be talking about prevention. What's love got to do with it? So we're going to be looking at the connections between some of the risks involved with substance abuse, as well as some of the risks involved with early dating and the difficulties that young people can have with romantic relationships and how some of those things are connected. A little bit about our organization, first of all. Drug Free AZ Kids is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are the Arizona affiliate of the National Partnership for Drug-Free Kids, and our mission is to be the leading source of information, resources, and tools for parents to help them avoid the problems of youth substance abuse. Given today's climate where the CDC refers to the abuse of prescription medication as an epidemic, and in Arizona, by the time kids are in high school, seniors in high school, nearly 1 in 5 has abused prescription medication to get high. Also, in the state of Arizona, the average age of first drug and alcohol use is 13. So if that's average, that means that plenty of kids in elementary school are already exposed to those substances. Also, marijuana is a big concern nowadays. With the increased accessibility, kids are increasingly exposed. According to the latest Arizona Youth Survey, kids who are reporting that they're getting their marijuana from somebody with a dispensary card, the number has increased by 50% in the last 2 years. So, and we know that marijuana, when it's used on a regular basis, can affect a young person's IQ. So it's just given all of these risks that face our kids, it's just so important that parents talk early and often with their kids about the dangers of drugs and alcohol. That's the good news, that regardless of how our kids might roll their eyes at us, we as parents really do have important influence, and it matters to our kids what we think. So it's important to be having those conversations. Next, a little bit about me. My name is Teresa Londoño, and I'm a program manager here with Drug Free AZ Kids. And my job takes me out into the community. I get to work with parents in the community during my presentations and workshops that we bring. And it's really a nice experience because I get to interact and learn from them as well as share information. I also get to partner with a lot of great people in the community who share our passion for keeping kids safe and healthy. Originally, I'm from Buffalo, New York, and proud of my hometown. I still love that place, and now I get to enjoy this beautiful climate here in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a former teacher and social worker, and most importantly, I am the mom of 2 teens myself, so I'm in the thick of it with all the other parents out there. A quote recently that I came across that really rang true to me is a quote from Alan Turing. We can only see a short distance ahead, but we can see plenty there that needs to be done. So even though we can't possibly know what the long-term future might bring for our kids, we can anticipate consequences that maybe they can't given their maturity. And we can see that there's plenty that we can be doing now, today, even if they're young. It's never too early to start those prevention conversations. So I want to start the presentation today with a question for all of you. I just am curious about what you all think. Should parents prohibit their kids from dating until they reach a certain age? And I'm going to open up a poll here. If you wouldn't mind weighing in, what do you think? There's no single right or wrong answer. And my job here today isn't to determine what the right or the wrong answer is. It's more to just facilitate consideration. So I'm just going to give everybody a chance to weigh in. Okay. Give you another minute. From what I'm seeing here, it looks nearly unanimous. Let me just share some of just leave it open another minute, see if anybody else weighs in. Okay, so here's what we're looking at. Nearly unanimously, everybody that weighed in believes that parents should prohibit their kids from dating until a certain age. So that leads to the next question. Okay, if you believe parents should set the age at which their kids begin dating, what age do you think that should be? So if you wouldn't mind, in the lower left-hand corner, there's a chat box there, and you can kind of weigh in, what age do you think that should be, and that's going to look and sound different depending on the family, depending on the particular child involved, but I'm just curious. Seeing 15, 16, or 17, a lot of 15s and 16s. Okay, I'm seeing somebody coming in saying 15 and with an adult chaperone, so we can place some conditions on the situation. That's a good kind of a good negotiation that we might be able to use with our kids. So again, there's no right or wrong answer. I'm not looking to persuade you one way or another. All I'm looking to do today is to facilitate the consideration of some things that maybe we haven't thought too much about. Okay, so where we're headed today, substance abuse and teen dating. We're going to look at what the trends are, what the risks are, and then a little bit about what we can do as parents and caring adults to keep kids safe. First of all, the trends. When we consider how our society has changed compared to when we were kids, in just one short generation, so much has changed, probably more in this past generation than in any other generation before us. With the technology, the digital access that we have today, with social media, this idea of Facebook official. Everybody has a Facebook profile or some sort of social media profile that asks about relationship status. And I don't know about all of you, but when I was a kid, single meant somebody who was not married. Nowadays, that means something different for a lot of our kids. Single means not in a relationship. So you could have a 12 or 13 or 14-year-old who is dating saying that they're not single, and that's a very different mindset. Also, texting. Texting allows nearly 24/7 connection with a romantic interest that we didn't have as we were growing up. And that can lead to what can be an unhealthy imbalance where the focus in a child's life becomes just their romantic interest instead of, to the exclusion of other healthy interests. And then, this idea of, well, we're more than friends, but are we dating? What does this mean? What is the status of our relationship? A lot of questions surround the ambiguity of relationships in this digital age. And then from the texting, that can lead to the danger of sexting. One lapse in judgment can lead to a permanent record of the indiscretion, and heaven forbid if things get shared. There's a lot at stake. Also, pornography on the internet. When we were kids, it wasn't as readily available. And even nowadays with social media, sometimes kids who aren't seeking this out, it can find them. So if one of their friends on social media likes something of a pornographic nature, that could show up in our kids' newsfeed, and so it might find them. Also, this idea of constant access. With this digital connection, kids can be in constant access. Again, that leads to that potentially unhealthy imbalance. So just some differences that our kids are facing compared to when we were growing up and trying to manage romantic relationships for the first time. If we look at the development of the teen brain and the child's brain, Because of the developmental phase that the kids are in during adolescence, it leaves them more susceptible to addiction. And that can be addiction to not only to substance abuse, drugs, and alcohol, but also addiction to porn. Because the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive center of the brain, which is responsible for rational thought, foresight, anticipating consequences, morality, empathy, all of that is still under development. It doesn't mean that our kids are not capable of that kind of thinking. It just means that it might not be their default. It might not be the first thing to occur to them. And so because this development is still underway, they are at a greater risk of developing an addiction. The reward center in the brain can be affected much more readily in these important developmental stages than adults. So we need to keep that in mind. Also, the emotional center of the brain during adolescence is fully developed. The rational part of the brain that would regulate the emotional center is not. So that can also result in some impetuous behavior, and sometimes, some explosive behavior from our kids. It can lead to poor judgment. So given that, it's really important that parents step in, not step back when the kids reach adolescence. Even though they appear to be more mature, they appear to be, big people, they still really need our input and our guidance so we can guide them toward that rational thought. Okay, and a little bit more about some of the other risks that we need to consider. We talk about something called a think, feel, do cycle in our parent workshops that we offer all across the Valley. We have a grant from the Arizona Parents Commission. We're very grateful because this allows us to present these parent workshops at no charge to participants in the community. And one of the things we talk about is the think, feel, do cycle, and how what a person thinks about, what their focus is, can affect their emotions, and their emotions can inform their decisions about what they do, what they say, and the kind of decisions they make. So if we kind of think about these next few things in the context of this think, feel, do cycle, we might understand what's going on with our kids a little bit more. Again, with the constant access that kids have to each other, especially of a digital nature. So they're not face-to-face. They're not necessarily building the necessary relationship skills that we had the opportunity to when we were kids, when we were face-to-face interacting with each other. Our kids are increasingly interacting with each other over texting, over social media, and so the communication skills, the problem-solving skills, the decision-making skills they might not have the same opportunities to develop some of those skills. Also, if they are very focused on a love interest to the exclusion of other healthy interests, then they might start to hang their self-worth, hang their identity on their connection with this other person, with this love interest, and that can lead to lower self-esteem. They're not placing their self-worth in their own interests and their own abilities, and so if they have a lower self-esteem, that can lead to feelings of discouragement, and that will make them less likely to take healthy risks. There are some risks that are good for our kids, like the risk that they might take on when they look for their first job, or when they try out for the play or the team, when they decide to study really hard to do well in a particular academic focus. There's no guarantee of success, so there is an element of risk, and we want our kids to feel the self-esteem in order to take those risks. When their entire focus is on their romantic partner, then it takes away from their ability to be successful in some of these other healthy pursuits. Also, there are studies that show that the amount of time a young couple spends together does have correlations to the likelihood of them using substances. So among couples that spend 25 hours or more together a week, they are 2.5 times more likely to drink than kids who don't spend that amount of time together. 5 times more likely to drink until they get drunk, and 4.5 times more likely to try marijuana. Okay. In addition, the number of friends that they have who are sexually active also has a correlation to substance use. So kids who have a large circle of friends that are sexually active, where that is considered the norm, they are 6.5 times more likely to try alcohol, 31 times more likely to drink until they get drunk, and 22 times more likely to try marijuana. And these statistics are coming from the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse. This was based on a survey of 1,000 teens. So this gives you an idea of the that these risks can kind of come in as a tangle. They don't come isolated. Substance abuse and relationship problems go hand in hand, unfortunately. Also, there is an increased risk of mental health problems like depression and anxiety if kids are early dating. If kids that are dating as young as 12, 13, during the middle school years, and like I said, during the think, feel, do cycle, if they are hanging their self-worth on this connection with their romantic partner, their self-esteem falls and it can lead to other problems. Also, they are much less likely to graduate from high school when they start dating at a very early age. Not only is the dropout rate higher among these kiddos, but then of course the likelihood that they go on to higher education is less likely. Also, there is a correlation with delinquency, okay, with lying, cheating, truancy, things like that. Okay, so we look at some of the statistics here. Okay, kids that start dating young, okay, as young as middle school or before, have 4 times the dropout rate compared to those kids who don't. They are twice as likely to be involved in delinquency compared to kids who don't start dating early. They're more susceptible to drugs and alcohol. And the substance use increases the risks of dating violence. Okay, when the substances get involved, the judgment goes away, and it's more likely that these unhealthy relationships can take root, and only 33% of teens in violent relationships tell anybody that they need help. Okay, so given this backdrop, it's very concerning that 81% of parents believe that dating violence is not an issue, or they admit that they don't know it's an issue. Okay, so I'm very glad that I have you all tuned in today so that we can be a little bit more aware and we won't be part of this group that's unaware of this risk that faces our young kids. One of the things that parents and caring adults can do is to be aware of what the red flags are and be on the lookout for them. So among the warning signs, some of the warning signs for relationship problems are very similar to some of the warning signs for problems with substance abuse. The avoiding friends and family, if there is a sudden change in peer groups, declining grades, loss of interest in other activities that they used to really like. And then some other red flags here from loveisrespect.org. kids who want to get serious too quickly, or if they are connected with somebody who is not respectful of them, who wants to keep tabs on them a lot, pressures them to do things that they don't want to do. If they're with somebody who treats them better when they're with other people compared to when they're alone. Calls and texts repeatedly or regularly, when there's that unhealthy connection where they want that constant contact. If there's a lot of jealousy in the relationship, those are all red flags, okay? And if a parent is aware of what the red flags are and is able to recognize them, then the parent can step in and assist with the situation. Okay, so this leads to the importance of us parents speaking with our kids. Kids whose parents have talked to them about risky behaviors, including drugs and alcohol, early sexual activity, things like that, are up to 50% less likely to have problems with these behaviors. And it's never too early to start, even when it comes to relationships and dating. We can teach them early on what a healthy relationship looks like, by talking to them about the relationships they have with their friends. We can ask them questions like, how does this person make you feel? And letting them know that they can trust their gut and that they do have the right to decide for themselves what feels okay and what doesn't. And they have the right to decide who their friends are. They choose their friends don't choose them. Also, if we're modeling respectful communication for our kids, we're teaching them what a respectful relationship looks like. If we avoid sarcasm and put downs with our kids, if we avoid yelling at them and we speak to them calmly and respectfully instead, teaching them sound decision-making skills and problem-solving skills also goes a long way. And like I said, in our workshops, we go in depth as to exactly what parents can do, specific strategies that parents can use to be able to instill strong character in their kids and teach these important skills that really go a long way to keeping our kids safe during these teen years. Another thing, these icons here on this stand for conversations, contracts, and consequences. So communicating what healthy relationships look like, asking them, what are your non-negotiables for dating? What would be a deal breaker for dating somebody? So that it's clearly defined in our kids' minds what is okay and what's not. They're less likely to follow along on impulse in a relationship if they've thought about it ahead of time. Okay, limiting the amount of time that they're spending with a partner, a romantic partner, so that we maintain that balance. Parents can also be the safety valve that eases peer pressure. A lot of times we can be the scapegoat for our kids. So if our kids are in a situation where they're being pressured to do something they're not comfortable with, whether that means to smoke or to drink or to use a drug or to get sexual too early, they can use us as an excuse. Oh my goodness, my mom, my dad would kill me. I can't do that. I have to be home by a certain time or my mom or dad will kill me. My mom and dad drug test me, so I can't do that. But it's important to set those limits for our kids and to set clear consequences ahead of time so that they're clear. If they don't meet the expectations, they will know ahead of time what the consequences would be. Okay, so clarity from the start is really important. And just to clarify, I am not advocating that drug testing equals good prevention. We can't rely solely on drug testing. The communication is really what's at the heart of it all. However, our kids can use that as an excuse. So that's where that comes in handy. If you have a drug testing kit on the kitchen counter and the kids can point to that and tell their friends, you saw that. I never know when my parents might test me. It gives them an out, which is the valuable part. It's less important whether we use it or not, but it's more important to give them the out. Okay, and then asking open-ended questions with our kids. What would you do if? Presenting a hypothetical situation and asking them ahead of time, what would you do if you were in this situation? If you went to that party after the football game on Friday night and your friend's older brother offered you a beer, what would you say? So getting them thinking that through ahead of time, knowing that the rational part of their brain isn't fully developed, so we need to guide that thinking. We don't want them in the situation without having thought those things through. Also, rehearsing refusal skills. So a parent can take on the role of an older kid who might try to pressure them to do something, and then they can practice what their comebacks might be. And they can kind of feel out what works for them and what doesn't, what feels comfortable and what doesn't. Also, setting up a rescue plan is very important. So you can talk ahead of time. Let them know that regardless of the situation, if they are at risk, they can call mom or dad or some other caring adult, and that person will come get them, no questions asked in the moment. And you can even come up with a code. Sometimes kids are embarrassed to call their parents to be picked up because other kids are going to hear them. And so a good way around that is to set up a code. So an example might be, I forgot to feed the dog. Okay, so kid calls parent and says, I forgot to feed the dog. The parent knows that that's the code and responds, that is your only responsibility and you haven't met that responsibility. You're grounded. I'm coming to get you. Where are you? And so that allows the kid to save face. Oh man, I'm really in trouble. I have to leave, and it's finding those ways to allow our kids to save face that releases the pressure valve of the peer pressure. Okay. Also, we've got a host of resources on our website, DrugFreeAZKids.org. If you go there, you can find advice on getting the conversation started. We have information on what kids need to know at the different developmental stages, from preschool all the way through high school. So what do they need to know all along the way? How do we get the conversation started along the way? We also have a drug guide there that gives information on the most common substances in our kids' world, as well as information on what kids think they know about each of the substances. A lot of times, a young person's decision to use is based on wrong information. So if parents understand what those typical misconceptions are, they can be more effective. We also have a video learning center, intervention and treatment information, as well as Spanish language resources there. So that's all the information I have for today. I know that some of you may have questions, and if you do, I'm here to answer any questions. Just type them in the chat box. But in the meantime, I'd like to ask you to answer a brief 2-question survey that I'm going to bring up right now. If you'd please weigh in on these 2 questions, that would help us to keep documentation for our grant through the Arizona Parents Commission that makes these webinars possible. And while you're doing that, I want to let you know to tune in next month on March 11th, exactly a month from today at noon. Our next webinar will be Up in Smoke, Marijuana's Many Misconceptions. So if you go to DrugFreeAZKids.org/webinars, and you'll be able to register for our next one. So I thank you all very much for tuning in today. Please answer our parting questions, and if you have any questions you'd like me to answer, go ahead and type them in the chat box. If you have to get back to work, that's fine. I'll I'll stay here for anybody who does have questions. Oh, I'm seeing a question here. Will this webinar be available to view at another time? Yes, we are recording this interview, or I'm sorry, we are recording this webinar, and it will be available. I will follow up with an email in the next day or so, and I'll also include additional resources. So resources for help, whether it's for substance abuse problems or domestic and dating violence problems. Also, the webinar will be recorded and will be available. I'm seeing a lot of thank yous. I'm very glad that this was helpful. And also, just know that you can always contact me directly. Let me just bring up my contact information. There's my email and my phone number. Feel free to contact me anytime if you'd like to address any questions to me personally. Okay, so I thank you all for tuning in today, and we will see you next month on March 11th. Thank you.